this is lesson 22 for 8th grade, and today we're talking about multiplying and dividing fractions. This is something they've seen last year, but we're getting into it much earlier this year than they would have last year. So just a review, but we're hitting it much earlier, and we're going to use it a lot more this year. We're going to find out that multiplying and dividing fractions is basically the same process. We're going to be multiplying the whole time, except for dividing, we're going to do one thing before we end up multiplying. That'll make sense as we go on here. But here's our two main goals for this lesson. Obviously, we want to learn or relearn how to multiply our fractions, and we're going to learn or relearn how to divide fractions. So, first of all, I'd like to start this lesson off by thinking about this question right here, or this topic. Let's start by observing 1/2 times 1/2. Well, what this is basically saying is that what is half of a half? So we're basically, when we're multiplying those fractions, we're saying 1/2 is half of what? So, or what is 1/2 of 1/2, basically. So, we can look at a picture to make this pretty clear, and I'm going to go back so I can draw my picture up here. But if we just take a square, and I'll try to make a decent square here. Definitely not a square, but not my worst. Alright, so if we take and split this square in half, like that, we want to figure out what 1/2 times 1/2 is. Well, what's 1/2 of one of these halves? That would be right here. We split this down the middle, and we color this guy in right here. That would be half of a half, basically. So we took a square, we split it in half this way, and then we said, okay, well, what's half of that half? And we split it that way. And if we look at our big picture here, we can see that we get 1/4 of our square. 1 out of 4 squares is filled. So 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4. Now, the way that we can do that without drawing a picture is just to take, okay, 1/2 times 1/2, and we say, okay, we're just going to multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, and denominator times denominator. So 1 times 1, all over 2 times 2. 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. So there we go. That is the concept behind multiplying fractions. And I always like multiplying fractions because it's not like when you're adding or subtracting where you need to get a common denominator. You don't need a common denominator because you're just multiplying straight across. You only need a common denominator when you're adding or subtracting fractions. Oops. Alright, so let's look at this one real quick. Multiply 1/3 and 2/3 together. Alright, if we do that, we'll get 1/3 times 2/3. Basically, this is saying, what is 1/3 of 2/3? Okay? So, it does want us to illustrate this multiplication with a chart or a picture, so we'll do that. We're looking at what is 1/3 of 2/3. We want thirds. So we've got this broken down now, and they want what is 1/3 of 2/3. Well, we do this here. So we've got 2/3 when we look at this. That is 2/3, and then 1/3 of that would be these two boxes. Okay, so that would be 1/3 of your 2/3. All right. And if we extend our lines here, we actually have 2 out of 9. So we should get 2/9 when we go ahead and multiply this together. So we've got 1 times 2, and 3 times 3, and we get 2/9 there. So our picture does match up with our multiplication. I would say just going ahead and doing the multiplication is much easier than having to try to draw a picture every time we do this. But it does help to visualize and say, oh, okay, 1/3 of the 2/3 is actually 2/9. Now, this actually is saying the same thing. This is a multiplication problem, because as I was saying before with the 1/2 of 1/2, or 1/3 of 2/3, well, 3/4 of 8/9 is a multiplication problem. So 3/4 times 8/9, and we're going to go ahead and do that. We could go ahead and take a shortcut here. We do know that we want to multiply straight across. We could do 3 times 8, get a numerator, over 4 times 9, get our denominator, and we would get 24, so 3 times 8 over 4 times 9 equals 24 over 36. That's fine, we can do it that way, but there is a shortcut, because we can see that we'd have to reduce here, and if we did reduce, looks like what goes into 24 and 36, 6 goes into both of those. Actually, an even bigger number goes into one, 12 goes into divide by 12, we get 2/3. So that's what we're looking at there. But here's how we could have saved time with that one. 3/4 times 8/9. We can look at the diagonals. So 4 and 8, they share a common factor, which is 4. So we'll cross those out. We'll divide each one by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 3 and 9 share a common factor. Their common factor is 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 9 divided by 3 is 3. Oops. And now we have 1 times 2, which is 2, all over 1 times 3, which is 3. So we still get the same answer, except for this way, we don't have to reduce in the end. So, if you like to cancel before you multiply, I say go ahead and do that. That's what I do. Saves time and energy, and it's kind of fun. But obviously all math is fun, right? Alright, I'm going to check my video time quickly. Looks like we're doing okay. Alright, so in order for us to get into the whole division of fractions, the first thing we have to talk about is the reciprocal of a fraction. So it says the product of two fractions is 1, or if the product of two fractions is 1, then the fractions are reciprocals. It's a big word in math, reciprocals. Basically just means, so we can see here we've got 2/3 times 3 over 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 over 6 is 1. Basically, the whole thing about reciprocals, we're going to make this really easy. These two fractions, 2/3 and 3/2, are reciprocals. All we did was flip one of them around. Okay? Reciprocal, that's all it means. Flipping the fraction around. So your numerator goes to your denominator, denominator goes to your numerator. And that's shown by this right here. We can form the reciprocal of a fraction by reversing the numbers of the numerator and the denominator of the fraction. So, the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Alright? Some say we invert a fraction to form this reciprocal. And this is an expression for another name for reciprocal, which is multiplicative inverse, which we talked about with one of the first lessons earlier this year. So if you need to go back and look at that, you can. Multiplicative inverse, the reason they call it that is because if you multiply these two together, or if you multiply these two together, you get to 1, which is your multiplicative identity. Alright? So that's why it's called that. Alright, so real quickly here, what is the reciprocal of 5/6? Well, all we have to do is flip it around. So this would be 6 over 5. Letter B. What is the multiplicative inverse of 3? Same thing as the reciprocal. So this and this, they are the same thing. Alright? of 3. Well, 3 is written as 3 over 1, so the inverse would be 1 over 3. Alright? How many 1/4 are in 1? This is basically saying, so if we thought about it like this, side note here, side note. How many 2's are in 4? So if we thought about this question, how many 2's are in 4? Well, 2 2's go into 4, so the answer to this would be 2. Or basically, 4 divided by 2. That's how we would get that answer. So, how many 1/4 are in 1? Well, this one we can think about like money, and this is leading us into the division of fractions. Think about it like money. This is saying, how many quarters are in 1? Well, 4, right? There are 4 quarters in $1, okay? So there are 4 1/4 in 1, or basically what you're doing there is just taking the reciprocal. 4 over 1, which equals 4. Okay? So that leads us into D here. How many 2/3 are in 1? Well, we'll just take the reciprocal again, make it real simple. 3 over 2. 3, so 1.5. 3 halves of 2/3 are in 1. Sounds a little confusing, but this is definitely leading us in the right direction towards dividing fractions. Because we need the reciprocal in order to divide. So, and that's what this is saying right here. So we use reciprocals to help us divide fractions. We want to know the number of 3/4 and 2. We divide 2 by 3/4. Alright? There are twice as many 3/4 and 2 as there are in 1, so we multiply 4/3 by 2. Okay? This was, oh yeah, here we go, right here. You can see that they use the reciprocal. So when we're dividing fractions, we would say 2 divided by 3/4 is actually the same thing as 2 times the reciprocal, which is 4 over 3. So that's like what I was saying in the beginning. When we divide fractions, we actually don't divide at all. We are actually multiplying the whole time. We are dividing, but the process with fractions is to multiply, and it's a lot easier to do it that way. Alright, so if we look at this example real quick, it says 1 quart is 1/4 of a gallon. A pint is 1/8 of a gallon. So how many 1/8 are in 1/4? So that's 1/4 divided by 1/8. And I want to make sure I got this right. Yep, so how many 1/8 go into 1/4? So 1/4 divided by 8. And we should get, we're going to turn this into the reciprocal here. So this is actually 1/4 times 8 over 1. And if we do that, we get 1 times 8, 4 times 1. 8 over 4 is 2. So it looks like there are 2 1/8 and 1/4. Alright? So that's how we go about that problem. I want to check my time. I know we're getting close. Got about a minute left. And this is our last example. Alright. Simplify. 3/4 divided by 1/3. So we have to get the reciprocal of this and turn it to multiplication. 3/4 times 3 over 1. And we get 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 1 is 4. And we could turn this into a mixed number. This is also equal to 2 and 1/4. That would be our answer. So, big idea here with dividing fractions. Take your second one, or whatever you're dividing by, reciprocal, turn into multiplication. Alright, we're going to talk about this a bunch more later. Thank you.